Is writing even worth it? Now, of course, this is a giant question with all kinds of ramifications, and there's all kinds of intangible benefits to it. But let's set those aside for a second. I'm going to come back to those, and let's just look at it from a purely monetary standpoint. Now, this can be dangerous when people come to me and they want to join our workshops or our writer mentorship program, and they're like, I want to become a bestseller and make a bunch of money. I'm like, do not sign up for this, because pursuing writing purely for the standpoint of making a bunch of money is not a great idea. There's way easier ways to make money than through your writing. So let's just set that aside for now. If you're trying to get rich, becoming a writer is not the most direct path. Go look on YouTube. There's lots of other options. But what people don't understand is there is so much money in the book industry. In 2022, the music industry made $42.5 billion. In 2023, the global movie box office was $29 billion. But in 2022, the book industry made $98 billion. Now, whenever I quote these stats, somebody inevitably says something like, yeah, but all that money goes to the top players, and oh, it's all the bestsellers making that money, and there's all these different ways that that money's coming in. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. I'm not going to argue with that. But at the same time, $98 billion is a lot of money. You don't need that big of a slice of it. In fact, a really, really tiny slice of that can still make you significant money, like life-changing money. So let's just do some quick back-of-the-napkin math here. If you publish an ebook for $9.99 on Kindle, you make about $7. And depending on your paperback, how much you're going to charge for that, you also make about $7. So we're just going to use that number, $7. Let's say you figure out a way to consistently sell 100 copies of your book a month. Well, that's $700 a month that keeps coming in month after month, year after year. I published a little book back in 2013 called Your First 1,000 Copies, and then in 2018 I wrote an updated version of it. But other than those two moments, writing the original and publishing it, and then writing the second edition and publishing it, I haven't touched that book. And it brings in somewhere between $700 and $1,200 every single month. Imagine if you had something that you created 10 years ago that is still bringing in even just $500 a month. Like your water bill and your electric bill just gets paid every month because of this thing you did 10 years ago. Back like 10, 12 years ago, I was working with Hugh Hoe, who wrote Wool in the Silo series that has now become an Apple series. And back then, he was kind of the poster child of this early KDP self-publishing movement. He was part of that small group of authors that was being very successful as a self-publisher early on. And this was one of his favorite things about it, not the fact that he was making a ton of money, that was helpful for him, but what he loved is that authors could start publishing their stuff and making a little bit of money, paying their light bill, paying their water bill, going on an extra vacation this year, just because they're putting their books up on Amazon and selling them. So there's all these get-rich-quick schemes, and there's all these ideas of setting up businesses that are automated, that just bring in money automatically, and you don't have to do anything, and most of them are scams, or at the very best, they're not actually automated things. You have to keep showing up and doing something to keep making money. Books aren't like that. If you have your books up for sale, and they're print on demand for the print, and they're available in digital, every time somebody buys a copy, you just get money. There's nothing that you have to do extra. You don't have to keep doing anything to keep that money coming in. Now, again, there's all of these stats out there about how the odds of you making any money at all, especially on fiction writing, is so low because of the millions of books that are published every year and how many of them actually sell and all of that. And I get it. I quote those stats too. It's absolutely true. If you just look at it across the board, put all the writing in one big bucket and just say, what are the odds of your book doing anything, then you're probably not going to make any money. But that's not actually an accurate or fair way of looking at this. All books are not created equal. So the idea of just saying, well, all books are the same and it's just completely random, that's not real. And this is what we've seen. Shawn Coyne, the creator and founder of StoryGrid, has been in the publishing industry for over 30 years. And what he's seen is the books that are written better tend to sell a lot more over a longer period of time. And they don't even require some huge launch. So he worked as the editor on the book The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And the first year that book came out, it only sold about 9,000 copies. But then the next year it sold more copies than that year. And then the next year it sold more copies than the year before. And ever since it's come out, it's sold more copies than the year before. This is the thing people don't understand about books, the longevity of books, right? So if a movie comes out, the odds of it continuing to make money over decades is really, really small, even if it's a really popular movie, especially with all the changes in the industry. That's not the same for books. Books have a really, really long shelf life. Think about the fact that every time somebody buys a copy of Lord of the Rings, some publisher somewhere makes money on that, and J.R.R. Tolkien's family also makes some money on that. And it's been a minute since they made any updates to those books, right? So you have to understand like how these economics work, and that once books start selling, they tend to keep selling for a really, really long time. This is true for fiction and nonfiction. So this is where we come back to this idea of, is writing a book worth it? Not just writing a book, but becoming really, really good at writing. Because again, what we've seen is the books that are written the best tend to sell more when they come out and tend to keep selling for a really long time. So you'll see these books that come out and they're these huge flash in the pans, but then they just kind of go away. And that's usually because there's a lot of marketing behind it, a lot of push behind it. But we see books all the time that come out, no flash, no bang. Most people haven't heard about it, but they just sell and sell and sell. I have a good friend of mine, Josh Kaufman. He wrote the book, The Personal MBA. It's never hit any of the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, any of those awesome bestseller lists. And yet, 12 years later, it's sold over 1.2 million copies. The book just sells and sells and sells. And if you're somebody that's starting a business or you are thinking about starting a business, this book comes onto your radar and you end up buying a copy. And so who would you rather be? Some big New York Times bestselling author that sold 10,000 copies of their book, but then it just flatlined and it never sold again, because that's how most of the books that hit the New York Times bestseller list actually work? Or do you want to be an author that wrote a really, really good book that just sells and sells and sells? And so if you think of these as annuities, as building something that just drips in money to you, and you write one book that just sells 100 copies a month, you're making about $700. But you're allowed to write another book and another book and another book, and they can stack over time. So all the time I get asked questions of like, well, if the traditional publishing industry is such a mess, why are they still in business? Why are they still making so much money? It's because of the backlist. It's the backlist. That's where all the money comes from. Again, every time somebody buys a copy of The Lord of the Rings, a publisher somewhere makes some money. And so this is what you can do as a writer. If you work really, really hard to become a great writer, you put a book out and you do it in a way where it just sells a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. One is you have something that's going to drip in money to you for a very long time. The other thing is if you keep doing that, the odds of you having a book that actually has any kind of a hit goes up. And again, you don't need a multi-million bestseller hit. What if you just have a book that's selling 1,000 copies a month? That is doable. That is possible. And that's like $7,000 a month that would be coming into your bank account. And I don't know about you, but that would help me out a little bit. So anyway, back to this idea of whether or not it's worth learning how to write great books. I think it is. I think that there is odds are in your favor that if you learn to write a great book and you put the book out in any kind of way that it can find an audience, the odds of it starting to bring in some money for you, again, not just now, but for a really long time, it's there for you. I think it's possible. I don't think this is some pie in the sky dream, pigs fly, can never happen to you, because again, all books are not created equal. So when you look at those stats about how most books don't make any money, it's like, yeah, most books suck too. So if you actually learn how to do this, you can get better and actually move your book up the ladder so it actually has a chance of finding an audience and continuing to sell. Now let's come back to these intangible benefits of writing. So like I said, when people want to sign up for our workshops or our programs and they start talking about the money they want to make off their writing, I just tell them, look, don't do it for that reason. That is not a good reason to sign up. You're probably going to be disappointed because you need to pursue it in this way where you get the intangible benefits of it. because writing is really hard. Becoming good at writing is not just something you practice a few times and you're good at it. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done, and I'm still trying to get better at it. And it's not just hard in like a digging a ditch kind of way. It's a hard in like, oh my God, I suck, I'm never going to do this existential crisis kind of way. And so you should pursue it 100% for the intangible benefits. And this is why I tell people, yeah, you shouldn't take our workshops and programs to make money, but yes, you should pay for them because they're the best in the market. But we do things all the time that we don't make money on, right? So I train jujitsu because I love learning jujitsu, not because I think I'm going to make money on it or something like that. I do it for the intangible benefits. Becoming a great writer is something you should pursue because you want to become a great writer and you want to put a book out. As we say, we want to help you build the skills, write a book, and leave your legacy. You want to leave something behind that helps people. But what I'm telling you also is you shouldn't completely forget about the fact that this is a viable way to make money. This is a huge industry and you only need a little tiny slice of it to make money that actually helps you. And this is the thing. Those two things go together. Because if you want to write a book, if you want to build the skills, write a book, leave a legacy, well, to leave a legacy, people have to read the book. And to read the book, they've got to pay you money. And so pursuing putting your book out in the world and having it sell 100 copies, 500 copies a month, that means that's 100 people, 500 people a month that are reading your writing and it's making their life better. That's how you leave a legacy. And so that's what we strive for here, is this idea of I want to be great at writing purely because I want to be great at writing. And also, I want to be great at writing because when I do put a book out, I want it to have the best chance it possibly can to go out and change people's lives and therefore make me money. Because again, this is life-changing money, this idea that it just drips in, because it doesn't just drip in for me. I'm going to die, I'm going to go. Well, then my kids are going to own the rights to those books, and it's going to keep dripping money in for them as well. This is what Shawn and I talk about all the time, is with our publishing house, we're not trying to make a bunch of money for ourselves right now. We're trying to pay for our grandkids and their grandkids' college, if college still exists then. But you get the idea. And so I want you to think about this when you think about the money and people tell you it's a complete waste of time, you can't do it, you should never try to put your books out because they're not going to make any money. And it's like, on one hand, yeah, sure. The odds of you making $1 bajillion selling books is pretty low. But if you work really hard and you write a book that is getting better and better and better, you're not just in that pool of millions of books coming out. You're in a much smaller pool that has a much more likelihood of actually going out into the world, making money and changing people's lives. So keep that in mind as you pursue your writing, is that it should be about the writing, but this is not a crazy way to make a little bit of money in coming in if you truly understand the economics of how the publishing industry and books work. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Thanks for watching. If you're wondering who I am, my name is Tim Grahl. I'm the CEO of StoryGrid. I'm the author of The Threshing, Your First 1,000 Copies, and Running Down a Dream. Also, I don't talk about this too much on this channel, but I've been in the publishing industry for over 12 years. I'm a world-renowned book marketer, and I've seen all kinds of things in the publishing industry and how it actually works. My partner, Shawn Coyne, has way more experience than me. He's been in the publishing industry since the early 90s. He started out as an associate editor, and he's been around the block as an editor. He's run his own publishing houses. He's been an agent, and he is a world-renowned editor. And so when we talk about this stuff, we actually know what we're talking about. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. If you want to find out more about what StoryGrid can do for you, go to storygrid.com, sign up for the newsletter, check out all the free resources we have there. And then finally, as always, thanks for being a writer. Thanks for being a part of our community here at StoryGrid, and I'll see you next time.